Welcome back to our channel, folks. My name is Brad and I'm out here at Piney Grove, and today's video is going to be a little different. Last year we started thinking about doing a YouTube channel, and we were filming a bunch of things and we weren't really sure if we were going to do it or not. But back then we were a little shaky, and but we have some good footage that we want to share with y'all, and we think it'll be helpful, especially those of you that have tractors and that have bush hogs for this particular video. So in this video, what you're going to see is me repairing a gearbox. Not necessarily the gearbox, but the seal in front. And I looked on YouTube and I could not find, actually I looked everywhere. I looked, this is a King Cutter 5-foot bush hog with a 40 horsepower gearbox. And I couldn't find anywhere where the input seal was changed. And so I couldn't really figure out how to do it. So I just took it upon myself to do it, and that's what you're going to see in this video. So I looked up the part number at King Cutter, and I was able to find the actual part number for the input seal. Now, I'm not talking about the seal underneath where the stump jumper is. That's a common seal that leaks, and there's a lot of data out there on how to replace that seal. You pull down the stump jumper, and then you take the gearbox off, and you can get to that seal. But the seal I'm talking about is this input seal right here. And I've got 3 brush hogs. And in my videos, sometimes I'm going to call them bush hogs. That's what I called them growing up, and I know that bush hog is a brand, but sometimes I'm going to slip up and call them bush hogs. But in this brush hog, this seal right here, this input seal was leaking, and it was leaking badly. And not so bad that it was causing an issue with the pinion gears. I mean, oil was staying in there, but it was leaking and making a mess, and it needed to be resealed. So I looked up the part number, and I ordered the seal off of Amazon. And it's the same seal for all the 40 horsepower gearboxes. And you're going to see in this video how I took this apart and put in a new seal. And now this is probably 7-8 months later, and there's probably, I don't know, 50 hours on this bush hog. And there's been a lot of heavy brush. You saw it in our fence video. In our pastures, in my hunting lease, I've done a lot of extreme brush hogging with this thing. But I think there's a lot of great information in this video, so Deb, roll the tape. Okay, what I have here is a 5-foot King Cutter bush hog that I've totally destroyed in the woods on my hunting lease. What we're gonna work on here is this 40 horsepower gearbox. I've got an input shaft seal leak right there in that area. First thing I got to do is take off this PTO shaft, and it's held on with a, probably heard of a shear bolt, but there's the shear bolt right there. That this thing's probably sheared 10 shear bolts in its life, if not more. Take this gearbox off off completely, but that would require me to lift this bush hog up and get it from the bottom and take off the stump jumper. I get a little burr on them from being turned inside there and the impact and the vibration. So it's got little shoulders on it that got caught. Now, I've never done this before, so you're going to learn as I do. But I looked on YouTube and I couldn't find where anyone had documented changing the input seal on a King Cutter bush hog, or any bush hog for that matter. If this was on the tractor, I would take that bolt out and then spin it with the PTO, and that would remove any burr that's in here. But like I said, it's at my house, not where the tractor is. Okay, told you it's been a while since I've done this, and we're learning together, because I see there's a little snap ring that holds this PTO shaft on. Oh, there it goes. So there's that little snap ring. Maybe it'll come off now. It looks like there's a gasket there. I don't really want to mess that up. Really wish there was instructions somewhere
on how to do this. It actually looks pretty good inside. None of the teeth are really messed up. Trying to figure out how to get to the seal. So, looking at this, it's not a planetary gear, but the main gear, the drive gear, I can see where it's got some impact marks on it. And again, it's an older bush hog, and I put it through a lot. I don't know if the camera will pick it up. There's a bunch of just impact marks where the gear has worn away. So it's still in good shape and it'll still work. It's just definitely showing its age. So there was a snap link in the back. In that little cavity, there was a little snap link, and I took that out and nothing happened. You can see a bearing on that end for sure. So what I'm going to try and do is take this gear off. It's got a snap pin on it. This one doesn't look like it's going to be as easy as the other ones. Okay, let me show you where we're at. So this was in here, like that. Then that bearing went down in that cage right there. None of this stuff looks bad. And the bearing's smooth. And then this gear was over top of it, like that. The gear was over top of it. And then this snap ring was around there in that second notch. And that snap ring was really difficult to take out. I had to use a small pair of ice grips, a pry bar, and a screwdriver. So I got it apart. Okay, now what I'm going to attempt to do is knock that rubber seal out. Literally just popped right out. I should be able to get a nice square block and just tap that in. I mean, I think it's that simple. I'm just getting that real smooth so it goes through that seal, that new seal, without cutting it. This should make putting that PTO shaft on easier too. Okay, I'm just going to use a little bit of motor oil here to lube up that seal in this shaft. It won't matter if this mixes a little bit with the gear oil because I'm not going to use that much. But I just want this shaft not to cut that seal at all when I push this through. Hate to do all this work and then skip a step now and end up with a cut or a braided shaft seal. It's a double lip seal. Boom, that's in there. And this little seal, which I didn't show coming out, but it came out really easy, just kind of snaps in right here, probably. That snaps in there, that holds that bearing in. This gear was gear side out, so it could mate with the planetary gears. As far as I know, there's no reason why it needs to go a certain way. Pop right down there, wouldn't it? It's in the first gap. Now I got to go down to the second gap. Okay, I had to bring the operation inside. You see that angled snap ring? I got to get that down in the second groove. I do not know the tool for this type of snap ring. Obviously, screwdriver is working for me, but it is not the right tool. Okay, I finally got that ring. So it was easy to get over these lugs and get into this groove, but I couldn't get it into the groove where it's at now. And what was happening was the way I had it sitting on these 4x4s is that it was allowing this gear to come towards the camera and reducing that slot size right there. So instead of having it sit in between these 4x4s, I put it up on top of the 4x4 like that, and that way this stayed all the way against the bearing cage. So today I've got some Permatex sealant and the gaskets that I took apart, or when I took this bush hog apart, I got the gaskets from it. So I'm going to seal around this edge and try and get this back in the casing and get this bush hog back together. I don't think this gearbox has ever been taken apart, because when I bought the bush hog, it was fairly new and in good shape, but it has a white ring of silicone all the way around in the mating surface. So if the manufacturer did something there to prevent a leak, then I'm going to just go ahead and put a little bit of this there. I'll never do this again, so it really doesn't matter if I put way too much here. As long as it doesn't leak, I'll use some of that same RTV material inside the bolt holes, because that's the way it was sealed from the factory. So for my other bush hog, I might try to rip that seal out without taking this gearbox apart. Because if you get this shaft smooth and then oil it up, you can put the seal over top of it and press it in. And that would save a whole lot of time. Okay, so I got it all put together and I got the bolts torqued. I'm going to pull out this plug. And one thing that some people don't realize about bush hogs is that they got a vent. And so this is the vent plug. That's a spring-loaded little vent right there on the end. And when pressure builds up inside of this gearbox, it's got to vent out, because if it doesn't vent out, it's going to go out through the seal on the shaft, the horizontal seal or the vertical seal. So you can't just put a plug here. It's got to be the manufacturer's vent. If you ever lose this, make sure you put in the right one. You can't just put a pipe plug in there. And I'm going to fill it up with 90 weight gear oil until it starts coming out of that plug. You can see that oil is coming out of the fill, or the I don't even know what that's called right now. But basically you fill it to that level until it starts coming out of that hole, and then you know it's at the proper level. If I've done everything correctly by changing this seal, this gearbox should no longer leak up under here where my finger's pointed, and that's where it was leaking before. You see the residual oil on the bottom, some of which I spilled when I took it apart, but it was just sitting in my shed leaking around that seal, the bottom of that seal. Remember when I took this apart, I had this ring that I forgot to take off. I cannot believe how quickly that went on. Okay, now for the shear bolt. Just going to put the same shear bolt in it. The whole purpose of this bolt is to brake so that you don't break your gearbox if you ever hit a stump or something like that. And I'll tell you that a shear pin or a shear bolt will break when you are as far away from your truck in a hardware store as you can be. So I always keep one or two shear bolts in my truck, or I think actually in my tractor box. So I just use one jam nut, and I'll put it all the way up against the collar here. And then I'll put that lock nut against that jam nut. I think it's a 1/2-inch bolt, so it takes a 3/4 nut, and I don't want that nut just torqued on. This is a jam nut here. It's got the nylon locking device on it. that should be good to go. She's took it apart. We changed the front input seal. It's a King Cutter 5-foot bush hog. We filled it with fresh oil, so it should be good to go. They're relatively maintenance free, the gearboxes are.
So thanks for stopping by today and checking out this video. This really was an easy fix. I didn't really have any special tools, you know, screwdriver, needle nose pliers, hammer. It was just a really, really easy fix, and that seal the old seal came out easily and the new seal went in easily. And as I started this video with, this thing has a bunch of extreme brush hogging hours on it, not just cutting grass, but cutting brush as big as I could back this thing over. And the seal is held up well. So it's definitely something you can do. For the cost of the seal, I think it was $20 or so. So for 20 bucks and a couple hours of labor, of your own labor, you can take apart your brush hog gearbox and reseal it, and you'll be good to go probably for 10 years. So hopefully you enjoyed today's video. If you would, click that like button. That's that thumb at the bottom. Subscribe if you haven't already. And both liking and subscribing really help out our channel. That's all I've got for you today. So take care, and we'll catch you on the next one.